What's going on, everyone?
What's going on, y'all? Sleazy, how we doing today?
Doing great.
Outstanding.
How you doing?
Oh, been waiting for this all morning. Got the sweats going.
Well, at least you're getting some sort of a workout.
Exactly. Burning calories any way I can. Got to work off all that beer somehow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome,
welcome you guys. Thanks for joining us. This is a new show me and Sleazy are going to do. We're going to do weekly deep dives into something unusual, unexplained, cryptid-based aliens. It's gonna get interesting. It's gonna get interesting.
Susan might hate us after a while, but we'll keep going.
Well, I don't think I'm real high on Susan's friendly list anyway, to be completely honest.
Well, that's why you're the co-host. I haven't pissed her off yet.
That works. So today we're gonna go into Göbekli Tepe. And I'm probably not saying it right, but that's how I say it.
It's okay. The right way is the American way.
That's Göbekli Tepe is a pretty interesting situation there. It's kind of making us rethink human evolution in history.
So I'm mildly familiar. Give me a little bit of a brief synopsis for me in the chat.
Okay. Göbekli Tepe is a pretty recent discovery. They found it. They originally found it back in the 60s. Some surveyor was out there and he stumbled on it, but they didn't think it was very significant, so they hadn't really touched it until like 94, when a University of Chicago professor sent an archaeological team out there to start digging it up. And it turns out this place is way older than anything we know about currently. It's like 10,000 years old. So it pushes the architecture and some of the things they're finding in there pushes a lot of human evolution back way further than we thought it would. There's things that about this place that they shouldn't be there for the time period. There's carvings, there's intricate architecture. It's pretty neat. And they found out that it was intentionally buried by people.
That's interesting.
Yes. So it probably took more time to bury it than it did to build it. So the question then becomes, why did they bury it? Was this to preserve something? And if so, what? Was it? Because, if it was taken over by enemies, it would have been destroyed, not buried.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty unusual situation that we still don't really know much about.
Yeah, I was with it until that buried part. That kind of threw me for a little bit of a loop.
It's pretty strange.
All right, so
there's a few theories as to what it is, and we'll get into a couple of them at the very least.
All right, let's see what chat's going on first. Jess, hello.
Hello, Jessica. You're so pretty.
Belandris, what is this? I think we explained that. I don't think we know ourselves, but we're working on it.
We're figuring it out, y'all. We're figuring it out.
Let's see. X-Cobra coming in.
Saw a snake.
Saw a snake.
I did see that.
Foul?
I did see that photograph, and apparently it was analyzed, and the photo seems to be legit, and they estimate that snake was roughly 50 feet long, but there's still questions.
Yeah, a 50-foot snake's still fucking huge.
It would be the largest snake that we've ever discovered living. There's some prehistoric ones that get way big, but...
Oh, yeah. We got an impish just lurking and stalking us. That's cool. We're okay.
Love you, impish. Thank you.
And just doing Jew work. I love it.
Yes, the like button. Smash the like button. Go ahead and share this video out if you want, if you think we're worth it. And we are.
I think you're worth it, buddy.
You're worth it, Sleazy. 100%.
All right. Well, if everybody's ready, let's get into it. I want to learn something.
All right. All right. So I guess let me introduce Graham Hancock first. Graham Hancock is I think they refer to him as a fringe archaeologist, I think is the term they use. He doesn't necessarily buy into the mainstream in a lot of things. He's of the opinion that humanity has amnesia and we've been civilized and sophisticated and possibly even more technologically advanced than we are now in the past. And he believes that there was some kind of catastrophic event, and probably multiple times, where the human race has had to kind of start over and rebuild. And he's a smart cookie. I like him a lot. Not sure if he's always right, but I like him a lot.
Yeah, I mean, anything that isn't mainstream is considered fringe, but I think you should always be challenging everything.
Agreed. He got into it big with Egyptologists. He was trying to tell these guys over there that, like, hey, this doesn't make any sense what you're saying. And they, try to write him off and refuse to talk to him. And he's been, for lack of a better term, persecuted his entire career for not holding the mainstream narrative viewpoint.
We'll have to do a show about that one then.
Oh yeah, he's awesome. He's pretty awesome.
All right. Thank you, Jess. All right, if you're ready, let's get into it.
Yeah, let's check this out. This is Graham Hancock on Mike Tyson's Hotboxing podcast. And it's a short little description by Graham.
The history of Göbekli Tepe is not only did they create it right at the end of this cataclysmic episode,
those cataclysmic episodes that I was talking about. This one, he believes, took place at about 11,500 years ago at the Younger Dryas, or the ending of the Ice Age.
Began 12,800 years ago with a cataclysm, with a sudden rise in sea levels. There was 1,200 years of absolute hell on Earth. Then there was another change of temperature. Global temperature shot up very rapidly. The last ice sheets collapsed into the sea.
And he's got two books, Fingerprints of the Gods, and there's another one that goes along with it. But he outlines a lot of this stuff in those books. They're good reads. I recommend reading.
It was him and somebody else, I believe, that were talking about a potential meteor strike during the Ice Age that melted a ton of ice, right?
You're talking about Randall Carlson.
Randall Carlson, yeah.
Okay. And Randall Carlson is I don't know if you would consider him a professional geologist, but he's been looking at studying, doing this stuff for like 50 years. And they've actually, the Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson actually took a tour across the United States and other places in the world, but they went all over the United States and they were documenting and logging all these really bizarre geological features that they believe was caused by a great flood. So what they think is a large asteroid impacted the Earth during the Ice Age, and all the glacial melt happened very, very quickly and violently and suddenly.
Which is kind of weird because it lines up with a lot of, I don't want to say biblical because it's not just biblical, it's worldwide religious text.
And it's all over. It's not just Christianity. Everybody's got a story of a great flood in their history somewhere.
And that's the end of this episode. That's the beginning of our modern age, effectively. And at exactly that moment, Göbekli Tepe starts to be built by people who were only hunter-gatherers. They weren't a settled agricultural community, but they created this incredible structure.
Like I said, it shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have been present, the ability to build this thing with a hunter-gatherer society.
Yeah, and I have questions about that. I don't know if you saw an article a couple of years ago, but there was a bone tool that dates back to I think it was 40 or 50,000 years in I believe it was North America up near Canada, which keeps pushing that timeline back.
There's a weird thing in North America where I can't remember the name, but there's the something people, and the current theory is that nothing was before these people, so they don't dig, they hit that line in the dirt and then they stop because according to them there's nothing that could be beneath it, so they don't bother. They've recently in the last few years found some tools like you're talking that pushes it back by a lot, and they actually found a new evidence of like a domesticated horse that was way further back, like 30 to 50,000 years past what we believe people were here for, which is really cool, really interesting.
Yeah.
The largest monumental structure on Earth. And in the process of creating it, they became agriculturalists. But the structure came first, the agriculture came second. And again, this is an unpopular view with archaeologists. But I think what we're looking at in Göbekli Tepe is what I call a transfer of technology. That people who already...
Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me at all. Like, you'd be building megaliths and superstructures, but you wouldn't have agriculture. Like, that doesn't... It's not how this stuff works.
Well, what he's, I think, hinting at or getting to is that somebody came to this region, built Göbekli Tepe as like a school of sorts, as a farming teaching place, so that they can transfer this knowledge onto these hunter-gatherers that are already there. And then agriculture started in that region at this time.
That's significantly more interesting.
It's pretty wild, man. This whole thing is really wild.
Already knew agriculture and who already knew how to create megalithic structures, came to Göbekli Tepe. They used the construction of Göbekli Tepe to mobilize the local population. And in the process, they taught them agriculture. And then they buried it like a time capsule, because that same Pillar 43 that we looked at earlier spells out two dates. It spells out the date of 12,800 years ago when the cataclysm began, and it spells out our date today at the different solstices, at the winter and summer solstices.
That's another unique thing about this. Well, maybe not unique, but another curious thing about this place. It's aligned perfectly with like cardinal directions, and it shows the winter and summer solstice through the architecture, which would be important if you're teaching people how to plant crops at the proper times.
Yeah, this is interesting.
It's pretty cool.
So the suggestion is, and I pursue this in episode 8 of Ancient Apocalypse, that what they were doing, why did they go to all that trouble to bury Göbekli Tepe?
Yeah.
Burying it was more work than making it.
Yeah.
They put a massive great hill on top of it. Why did they do that? And
like I was telling you before the show started, this burying it would have taken so much longer to bury it than it did to build it.
Yeah, that's...
And if it was somebody that like conquered these people, that like took over, they wouldn't have buried it. They would have just destroyed it.
Yeah, the burying part's weird. Like, especially if they were using it to teach, you would think it would still be in use. The burying is what makes it extremely weird.
It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre. Somebody intentionally buried it in a very careful manner so that it wasn't destroyed.
And the suggestion is it's a time capsule, and that they intended to pass down a message to the future. And they used astronomy to provide dates for that. And they said, a very bad thing happened in the time that we call 12,800 years ago, and a very bad thing is going to happen in your time. Unless you do something about it.
I think they were conscious of us.
Yeah.
They were conscious, and they knew that we were going to read their work.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's a message.
I think people had giant egos.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Tyson's right on that one.
Yeah, it's just so weird because it, like, all the mess all the crazy stuff there was just offhand disregard. It's kind of like the more we dig, the more we're like, well, maybe
There's something weird going on here. There's something weird. And Xcomer, don't forget the handbags. I'm going to touch on it, but we're not going to get into it too deep on this one because that's going to be probably its own show.
handbags, like what your girlfriend or your wife brings home, or
Are you not familiar with the handbag thing?
I'm not.
Oh, you're going to love it. You're going to absolutely, I almost dropped an F-bomb. You're going to absolutely love it, bro.
All right, we'll definitely have to touch on that.
You're going to love it.
They thought they were gods, and God was going to see them, and they were going to see God when they died.
Many people think that, and who knows what we're going to see when we die. But what Göbekli Tepe speaks to me is a careful, deliberate effort to preserve a most extraordinary and inexplicable structure, to keep it safe. Bear in mind that it was, the work started 11,600 years ago. The site ran for about 1,000 years to 10,600 or 10,000.
1,000 years this place was being used.
That's a long time.
That's a super long time, bro. That's
Even the most like prestigious colleges on the planet right now are only like a couple hundred, and they've been rebuilt so many times.
well, and like obviously we're from the States, and over here, like nothing's that old. Like we don't. That's
Well,
impossible for us to grasp that amount of time.
yeah, there are some structures that old, but that's another topic for another day.
But as far as like, it's not like Europe where there's ancient buildings still standing everywhere. It's not like the Middle East where there's all these crazy old prehistoric sites. Like we don't have a whole lot of that here. And what we do have is usually a little different than what they've got.
I'm intrigued. I want to keep going. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
1,400 years ago. Then they close it down, they cover it up, they pour in millions of tons of rubble into all the stone circles, they create an artificial hill over the top of it, and they seal it. And then for the next 10,000 years, nobody knows it's there.
Yeah.
If it had been left open, it would have been destroyed by now. Human beings would have cannibalized it. They would have used it as a quarry.
Yeah.
They would have taken away all those big blocks and used them for other purposes. But because they buried it, it's still there today.
Established title is
It's pretty interesting little.
Yeah.
I'm brain farting on the right word to use. Review concepts.
So
Any of those will
just for anybody who hasn't seen pictures of this thing, I'm going to throw it up real quick.
Oh, we've got pictures coming.
Okay. So I'm just going to go over real brief what this looks like, because they did put tents over it to preserve it, stop stuff from getting into it, filling it back in. It's really impressive, the size and scale of this place.
It's
Like,
pretty
it's
big.
not small. Like, this took work.
Here, let me show. So this is the layout of the whole thing, right? You can see where it's at in the world. It's in
Yeah.
Turkey. It's in Turkey.
Barely.
Yeah, it's kind of close to Syria. But you can see the immense layout of this place. And they're still uncovering it as we speak.
All right. I'm gonna swap out your screen because I think I got something that shows the scale a little bit better.
Okay.
So this is a full-size truck. These are the tents covering it up. It looks like a dot next to those. This thing is huge.
It's ginormous. It's absolutely ginormous. And it's kind of weird that they put those those roofs over it, the canopies or whatever. It's kind of weird, but
it is, but it isn't. I mean, it's fertile land, but it's still pretty dusty. I would imagine wind blows up and it would start just filling everything back in. And seen archaeologists work before, they work slow as shit.
well, they have to. They got to be very careful with it all.
No, I'm not complaining. I understand it.
But it's just an immense complex that hunter-gatherers should have had no business anywhere near.
Yeah, air quotes hunter-gatherers.
Yes, air quotes hunter-gatherers. It's full of all these crazy T structures, and there's a name for them, and I'm brain farting on it.
Those look like a proto-Greek and Roman column. Like they were playing with the idea and got it to work.
And the whole place is full. There's dozens of these giant stone pillars, and they're all carved on the sides and on the fronts and on the back with like different animals. That seems to be the majority of the carvings, is different wildlife.
So I'm going to make a quick joke here. So there were white women involved, and it was astrology.
There's nothing out there. It's just desolate.
Yeah.
And you can see all the pillars here sticking up out of the ground, all the different chambers and walls and rooms.
Dude, do we have something to show the scale is? Oh yeah, they're fucking huge.
And you can see the what is that, a cow or a buffalo or something?
Yeah, it looks like an ox or a cow.
Something, right? This place is absolutely fascinating.
It's insane.
And you can see how the carvings are pretty intricate for what it is. There's a very obvious scorpion. And some of this has been a little lost over time, but those are very clearly birds. And you see on the very top, these 3 handbags.
Yeah.
See the handle and then the square.
It's a weird design feature.
Oh, we're gonna go into this at a later time because this is crazy bizarre. But you'll see this same exact symbol all across the planet in these ancient temples and architecture sites. They're everywhere.
Okay, let me check on chat real quick. XCOM are coming in. They found 11 more hills around there as well. Do you know what he's talking about?
I know in that part of the world, I don't know specifically what he's talking about, but I know that that part of the world and the further east you go, like in China, there's all these different burial mounds. And like the Chinese government specifically won't let anybody dig them up. But they're like the Terracotta Army, for example, most of it's still underground and never been disturbed.
Yeah. Super V dropping in, showing us
Super
love.
V.
Thanks, Super.
How you doing, sweetie?
Constellations. I think we briefly touched on that or made a mention of it. That's what it might be. Which would make sense if it was tracking constellations and time of the year for planting and harvesting.
Well, and there is like we were saying, it does show it aligns with the solstices as well. Like there's definitely some kind of astronomical importance to this site. 100%.
All right, Blandrus asking some questions. What was the train like thousands of years ago? It was probably very similar. I took some classes. I know enough to say it was probably really similar. I do believe most of that area in Turkey is hard stone with some soil, so it's not going to change too much over a few thousand years.
Well, we're talking,
but there are some changes.
We're talking 12,000 years, though, not a few thousand.
It's a few thousand.
It's a
it wouldn't have changed so much that it would have gone from like plains to hills.
No, but I do think that at the time this was a much more lush region. I think there was a lot more grassland than rockland, so to speak.
Well, even going back to the old Assyrian empires, they had fertile land like it was nothing. Like there were tons of rivers that have dried up since then and dried up that whole area. But yeah, I'm going to agree with you on that one. It's probably very similar to what it was today. Maybe just a little more growing there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah, they're huge.
Yes.
They're absolutely ginormous.
X-Comer mentioning the handbags.
We'll get there, buddy. We'll do a whole show on them. They're wild.
Looks like Jonathan's chiming in, agreeing with that. So I want to be enlightened. We'll definitely have to cover that. Belandris could be a basket.
Well, it absolutely could be. We don't know what they are. We don't know what they're supposed to represent. What we do know is that they're all over the place. They're all across the planet. So whatever they are is, in my humble opinion, likely to demonstrate some sort of a global community. You know what I mean? It shows, in my opinion, it shows that people were way more connected across the planet than we ever gave them credit for.
Most of this is still going through that. Some other random stuff. I want to touch on handbags because I'm interested to hear your take on it. Because I've got some theories about a lot of these structures and the global community theories that aren't popular with the people who like the weird stuff, but I get it. Yes, Jess, thank you. If you're watching, drop us a like. Make sure you're subbed. Let's get more stories like this. And Cool Frog stopped by. What's up?
What's up, Cool Frog? How you doing, buddy?
Isn't this in the Fertile Crescent area?
I believe so. I believe so, and I could be wrong.
It's technically a little outside of it, but it's the way it's dating. This definitely would have been a fertile area at the time. All right. Let's get through the rest of these. I want to see some more.
So we've got a couple more pictures here, but you can see like all the crazy carvings on this thing.
Yeah. Those look like foundations.
They do. Some kind of lizard or something. I don't know what that is exactly.
It's like a dog or a cat to me, but I wouldn't throw a lizard out. Like this took serious work.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Huh.
We've got we can go over more pictures or get into some writings on it. Up to you.
Let's get into some writings.
All right. So we're not going to cover this whole article because, well, maybe we will. So this article by Gaia, What is Göbekli Tepe? Facts, History, and Speculation. There are many wonders of the ancient world which boggle our minds and inspire awe in our hearts. But what happens when a site of such precision and magnitude proves beyond a scientific doubt the existence of man to be older than anything known before? Such is the case of Göbekli Tepe, which puts human history as we know it into question. First uncovered in 1994, uncovered, yes, discovered originally in the 60s, like I said earlier. By a local shepherd in Turkey, Göbekli Tepe contains megaliths weighing 7 to 10 tons and stands 18 feet high. Carbon dating firmly establishes its age at 12,000 years old, 7,000 years older than Stonehenge. Biblical history is commonly accepted and dates humanity at a mere 4,000 years old. Linda Moulton Howe proclaims that this discovery literally doubles the age of human history. What is Göbekli Tepe? In the time of cavemen, just before the Ice Age, without the wheel, tools, or agriculture, this was supposed to be here before the wheel, y'all. Göbekli Tepe appears with advanced technologies, detailed architecture, and astronomically aligned with the cardinal directions. Lying in the very heart of the cradle of civilization, this exquisite preservation is a gift of epic proportions. Buried for 10,000 years, the sacred site was discovered quite by accident in 94. German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt was called in for his expertise, and what he unearthed created a quandary of our understanding of humanity. The level of technique and detail is what first stands out. Richly carved in limestone, animals of the world are captured in both intricate carvings and sculptures. The impressive scope of wildlife depicts foxes, birds, boars, and snakes. The T-shaped megaliths, soaring some 18 feet tall, stand boldly in place. The carvings on these are carefully crafted with hands, arms, and clothing. These towering beings all face each other in a near-perfect circle. Klaus Schmidt's belief was that Göbekli Tepe was a sanctuary site, dubbed the world's first temple. No bones, no cooking utensils, nor tools lie among the ruins. Well, that's been proven false since. It appears that this was not a place where people lived, also proven false since. Maybe not proven, but questions have arisen. Only pristinely preserved structures standing in glorious contrast to the desert they now inhabit. Göbekli Tepe appears out of the primitive beginnings of civilization when brutish humans gathered berries and hunted as nomads. From these crude origins, a site that questions all accepted history appears out of nowhere. Did these Neolithic men stumble into sophisticated craftsmanship, or was there a spark that inspired their skill? Graham Hancock, again, suggests there must be an outside influence that taught advanced masonry to humans. He calls this a transfer of technology. Whether descended from the stars or a lost civilization, which the world has forgotten, it is these lines of inquisition that inspire the greatest possibilities for the creation of Göbekli Tepe. It covers a few strange possibilities, shall we say. But I'm going to hit on this one. The intentional burial of Göbekli Tepe spawns even more questions. The carbon dating locks in its creation at 9,000 BCE, though it was only discovered in 94. The hill was a pastoral landscape known as a potbelly hill, and for eons, no one knew what lay beneath. If we expand the Nephilim possibility, the burial of Göbekli Tepe could have been the literal cover-up of this misstep of human history. Note, Göbekli Tepe was not destroyed outright, but rather cautiously buried under 20 feet of sand, a further testimony of its significance and a clue that its secrets are waiting for us.
Yeah.
And that's all we're going to do out of that one.
It's interesting.
It is. It's pretty wild.
That article kind of touched on a lot of crazy stuff I definitely want to dig into.
That was Gaia, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I've got another group of pictures that we should look at real quick.
All right, let's do it.
And some of these are a little better. Some of them are not. But we'll get a better idea of some of the carvings with these. It's just huge. The whole place is so big.
Like that. And it's well planned out. Like, you don't get walls like that by just randomly stacking stuff together.
Exactly. I think that's Klaus, whatever I said. Oh, no, Harold Hauptmann. But, like, look at this carving.
Like, that's on par with Aztec and Mayan carvings.
It looks very similar to South American culture carvings that you see in the temples and stuff.
Like, that's scary similar.
They're starting to find tools. More carvings.
Like, I just want to address something real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Like, those are flint tools. you're not getting those carvings out of flint or anything like that. Like there has to be some sort of metallurgy going on. Like even if it's just copper or tin.
Something, I would assume, because limestone's not real easy to carve comparatively to like sandstone, right?
Not even close.
Right. There's very obviously some planning going on in this thing.
They're so massive.
They're huge. They're absolutely huge. And it was buried perfectly, so we could just dig it up in place.
It's just weird. Like that looks like some sort of altar.
There's a lot of theories that it when it first like came out or whatever, when they first started making news about it, they were calling it the world's first temple because that's what everybody assumed. But the more we get into it, the more curious it becomes. And I'm not sure why these little divots exist on the top of this thing either.
Yeah, those they almost look like something's supposed to be pinned there or sit in there.
Something. That guy again.
Dude, like I don't see anybody doing that with stone tools. Like at all.
You can see its ribs, you can see its muscle definition, you can see its whiskers on the front.
Yeah, like you need a hard chisel for that. You need a metal chisel to do that.
Something. This thing's like 18 feet tall. That handbag picture again.
Yeah,
those handbags get real trippy when you start seeing humanoids with big heads carrying them. It's just in this hill. These are the covers they put over them since.
Yeah, those are a little weird. I would expect them to have sides to stop stuff from getting in.
Just, I think it was mostly because the sun's beating down so hard, so people were having a hard time working. This is inside of it. I think actually now you can like tourist walk around these catwalks, but I'm not 100% on that. I know they like shut it down for a little while, but I think they've reopened it after these structures were in place.
My mind's blown.
It's a pretty wild deal. I mean, it doesn't make any sense according to our current understanding of the world and of human evolution.
Well, I know me and you personally have had discussions about how I think the human civilization's significantly older than it is.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think it's silly to not think so.
Yeah. All right. Looks like you got something else for us.
Yeah, I got a few articles that I wanted to go over still.
All right.
I got to get to it though. There we go. So like I was saying, the world's first temple, right? And this is from 2008. So we've learned a little more, but predating Stonehenge by 6,000 years, Turkey's stunning Göbekli Tepe upends the conventional view of the rise of civilization. 6 miles from Urfa, an ancient city in southeastern Turkey, Klaus Schmidt has made one of the most startling archaeological discoveries of our time. Massive carved stones about 11,000 years old, crafted and arranged by prehistoric people who had not yet developed metal tools or even pottery. X to doubt. The megaliths predate Stonehenge by some 6,000 years. The place is called Göbekli Tepe, and Schmidt, a German archaeologist who has been working here more than a decade, is convinced it's the site of the world's oldest temple. Luton Morgan, he says at 5:20 a.m., when his van picks me up at my hotel in Urfa. 30 minutes later, the van reaches the foot of a grassy hill and parks next to strands of barbed wire. We follow a knot of workmen up the hill to rectangular pits shaped by a corrugated steel roof, the main excavation site. In the pit, standing stones or pillars are arranged in circles. Beyond on the hillside are 4 other rings of partially excavated pillars. Each ring has a roughly similar layout. In the center are 2 large stone T-shaped pillars encircled by slightly smaller stones facing inward. The tallest pillars tower 16 feet and Schmidt says weigh between 7 and 10 tons. As we walk among them, I see that some are blank while others are elaborately carved. Foxes, lions, scorpions, and vultures abound, twisting and crawling on the pillars' broad sides. See, it's pretty close to Syria.
Yeah.
Schmidt points to the great stone rings, one of them 65 feet across. This is the first human-built holy place, he says. From this perch, 1,000 feet above the valley, we can see to the horizon in nearly every direction. Schmidt, 53, asked me to imagine what the landscape would have looked like 11,000 years ago, before centuries of intensive farming and settlement turned it into the rough, nearly featureless brown expanse it is today. Prehistoric people would have gazed upon herds of gazelle and other wild animals, gently flowing rivers which attracted migrating geese and ducks, fruit and nut trees, and rippling fields of wild barley and wild wheat varieties such as emmer and einkorn. This area was like a paradise, says Schmidt, a member of the German Archaeological Institute. Indeed, Göbekli Tepe sits at the northern edge of the Fertile Crescent, an arc of mild climate and arable land from the Persian Gulf to present-day Lebanon, Israel, Jordan, and Egypt, and would have attracted hunter-gatherers from Africa and the Levant. And partly because Schmidt has found no evidence that people permanently resided on the summit of Göbekli Tepe itself, he believes this was a place of worship on an unprecedented scale, humanity's first cathedral on a hill. With the sun higher in the sky, Schmidt ties a white scarf around his balding head, turban style, and deftly picks his way down the hill among the relics. In rapid-fire German, he explains that he has mapped the entire summit using ground-penetrating radar and geomagnetic surveys, charting where at least 16 other megalith rings remain buried across 22 acres. The 1-acre excavation covers less than 5% of the site, he says. Archaeologists could dig here for another 50 years and barely scratch the surface. Göbekli Tepe was first examined and dismissed by University of Chicago and Istanbul University anthropologists in the 1960s. As part of a sweeping survey of the region, they visited the hill, saw some broken slabs of limestone, and assumed the mound was nothing more than an abandoned medieval cemetery. In 1994, Schmidt was working on his own survey of prehistoric sites in the region after reading a brief mention of the stone-littered hilltop in the University of Chicago researchers' report. He decided to go there himself. From the moment he first saw it, he knew the place was extraordinary. Unlike the stark plateaus nearby, Göbekli Tepe, the name means belly hill in Turkish, has a gently rounded top that rises 50 feet above the surrounding landscape. To Schmidt's eye, the shape stood out. Only man could have created something like this, he says. It was clear right away this was a gigantic Stone Age site. The broken pieces of limestone that earlier surveyors had mistaken for gravestones suddenly took on a different meaning. Schmidt returned a year later with 5 colleagues, and they uncovered the first megaliths, a few buried so close to the surface they were scarred by plows. As the archaeologists dug deeper, they unearthed pillars arranged in circles. Schmidt's team, however, found none of the telltale signs of a settlement, no cooking hearths, houses, or trash pits, and none of the clay fertility figurines that litter nearby sites of about the same age. The archaeologists did find evidence of tool use, including stone hammers and blades. And because these artifacts closely resembled others from nearby sites previously carbon dated to about 9,000 BC, Schmidt and co-workers estimated that Göbekli Tepe's stone structures are the same age. Limited carbon dating undertaken by Schmidt at the site confirms this assessment. The way Schmidt sees it, Göbekli Tepe's sloping rocky ground is a stonecutter's dream. Even without metal chisels or hammers, prehistoric masons wielding flint tools could have chipped away at softer limestone outcrops, shaping them into pillars on the spot before carrying them a few hundred yards to the summit and lifting them upright. 7 to 10 ton stones. They're going to just carry them a few hundred yards and lift them upright. With no wheels, by the way.
Allegedly.
Then Schmidt says, once the stone rings were finished, the ancient builders covered them over with dirt. Eventually, they placed another ring nearby or on top of the old one. Over centuries, these layers created the hilltop. Today, Schmidt oversees a team of more than a dozen German archaeologists, 50 local laborers, and a steady stream of enthusiastic students. He typically excavates at the site for 2 months in the spring and 2 in the fall. Summer temperatures reach 115 degrees, too hot to dig, which is probably close to 40 Celsius off the top of my head. In the winter, the area is deluged by rain. In 1995, he bought a traditional Ottoman house with a courtyard in Urfa, a city of nearly 500,000 people, to use as a base of operations. On the day I visit, a bespectacled Belgian something. Why is that in my way? How do I get rid of it? Okay. Doesn't look like I can.
We're gonna have to talk after the show. I gotta get you something better so we can read articles for real.
Fair. Pile one. George Peters, an archaeozoologist from the Ludwig Maximilian University. Oh, there it goes. A bespectacled Belgian man sits at one end of a long table in front of a pile of bones. George Peters, an archaeozoologist from the Ludwig
Words is hard.
Maximilian University in Munich, specializes in the analysis of animal remains. Since 1998, he has examined more than 100,000 bone fragments from Göbekli Tepe. Peters has often found cut marks and splintered edges on them, signs that the animals from which they came were butchered and cooked. The bones, stored in dozens of plastic crates or stacked in a storeroom at the house, are the best clue to how people who created Göbekli Tepe lived. Peters has identified tens of thousands of gazelle bones, which make up more than 60% of the total, plus those of other wild game such as boar, sheep, and red deer. He's also found bones of a dozen different bird species, including vultures, cranes, ducks, and geese. The first year, we went through 15,000 pieces of animal bone, all of them wild. It was pretty clear we were dealing with a hunter-gatherer site, Peters says. It's been the same every year since. The abundant remains of wild game indicate that the people who lived here had not yet domesticated animals or farmed. But, Peters and Schmidt say, Göbekli Tepe's builders were on the verge of a major change in how they lived. Thanks to an environment that held the raw materials for farming, they had wild sheep, wild grains that could be domesticated, and the people with the potential to do it, Schmidt says. In fact, research at other sites in the region has shown that within 1,000 years of Göbekli Tepe's construction, settlers had corralled sheep, cattle, and pigs, and at a prehistoric village just 20 miles away, geneticists found evidence of the world's oldest domesticated strains of wheat. Radiocarbon dating indicates agriculture developed there around 10,500 years ago, or just 5 centuries after Göbekli Tepe's construction. To Schmidt and others, these new findings suggest a novel theory of civilization. Scholars have long believed that only after people learned to farm and live in settled communities did they have the time, organization, and resources to construct temples and support complicated social structures. But Schmidt argues it was the other way around. The extensive coordinated effort to build the monoliths literally laid the groundwork for the development of complex societies. The immensity of the undertaking of Göbekli Tepe reinforces that view. Schmidt says the monuments could not have been built by ragged bands of hunter-gatherers. To carve, erect, and bury rings of 7-ton stone pillars would have required hundreds of workers, all needing to be fed and housed. Hence the eventual emergence of settled communities in the area around 10,000 years ago. This shows sociocultural changes come first. Agriculture comes later, says Stanford University archaeologist Ian Hodder, who excavated Çatalhöyük, a prehistoric settlement 300 miles from Göbekli Tepe. You can make a good case this area is the real origin of complex Neolithic societies. What was so important to these early people that they gathered to build and buried the stone rings? The gulf that separates us from Göbekli Tepe's builders is almost unimaginable. Indeed, though, I stood among the looming megaliths, eager to take in their meaning. They didn't speak to me. They were utterly foreign, placed there by people who saw the world in a way I will never comprehend. There are no sources to explain what the symbols might mean, Schmidt agrees. We're 6,000 years before the invention of writing here, he says. There's more time between Göbekli Tepe and the Sumerian clay tablets etched in 3300 BC than from Sumer to today, says Gary Rolfson, an archaeologist at Whitman College in Walla Walla, Washington. That's fun to say. Who is familiar with Schmidt's work? Trying to pick out symbolism from prehistoric context is an exercise in futility. Still, archaeologists have their theories, evident perhaps of the irresistible human urge to explain the unexplainable. The surprising lack of evidence that people lived right there, researchers say, argues against its use as a settlement or even a place where, for instance, clan leaders gathered. Hodder is fascinated that Göbekli Tepe's pillar carvings are dominated not by edible prey like deer and cattle, but by menacing creatures such as lions, spiders, snakes, and scorpions. It's a scary, fantastic world of nasty-looking beasts, he muses. While later cultures were more concerned with farming and fertility, he suggests perhaps these hunters were trying to master their fears by building this complex, which is a good distance from where they lived. Daniel Stordier, an archaeologist at the National Center for Scientific Research in France, emphasizes the significance of the vulture carvings. Some cultures have long believed the high-flying carrion birds transported the flesh of the dead up to the heavens. Stordier has found similar symbols at sites from the same era as Göbekli Tepe, just 50 miles away in Syria. You can really see it's the same culture, she says. All the most important symbols are the same. For his part, Schmidt is certain the secret is right beneath his feet. Over the years, his teams found fragments of human bone in the layers of dirt that filled the complex. Deep test pits have shown that the floors of the rings are made of hardened limestone. Schmidt is betting that beneath the floors, he'll find the structure's true purpose, a final resting place for a society of hunters. Perhaps, Schmidt says, the site was a burial ground or the center of a death cult. The dead laid out on the hillside among the stylized gods and spirits of the afterlife. If so, Göbekli Tepe's location was no accident. From here, the dead are looking out at the ideal view, Schmidt says, as the sun casts long shadows over the half-buried pillars. They're looking out over a hunter's dream.
Dude, this is insane. Let me catch up with the chat real quick.
Yes, please.
All right, so it looks like there's a long discussion going in chat about UFOs. Guys, don't worry.
We'll get there.
We're going to get there.
We'll get there.
Some more stuff about pilots, UFOs, UAPs. Pixel coming in hot with the class goldfish. I love it. I love it.
Little American Dad reference there.
It's going to be a wonderful day. Belandris, we're going to get there. Keep watching the shows.
We're going to dive into all the weird and unexplainables.
I do believe they covered that in this article. I still don't think they're carving with flint. I don't.
I know that there's like I've seen a dude use a marble chisel and be pretty efficient with stone. And he said that it took him a long time to get the technique down and stop breaking so many chisels, but he was pretty good at it within a couple of years.
Right, but you're talking years for one person. Like one person didn't do this. Like this took a civilization of people that knew how to do it.
It's it's over 22 acres. That's twice the size of my property.
Yeah, it's
huge.
Massive.
It's huge.
We're gonna have to dig into that. We might have to do a little short depending on how much info they have. I kind of want to look into that.
Randall Carlson had talked on Joe Rogan about this. And I have heard so Randall Carlson was specifically talking about different technologies that we haven't developed, not necessarily more advanced, but just different. And there's something about sound waves, acoustics, that you might be able to move really large, heavy items with acoustics.
I think if you're doing that, we're into the realm of I need evidence that technology existed then.
Randall Carlson was saying that he's seen, and he said that it should be making news soon, but you know how that goes.
Yeah.
Belandris,
I guess I'm going to drop it here. Mighty's actually going to be joining for a couple shows.
He is. He's going to be doing this with us.
All right. Let's see. There's still a lot of speculation on ancient Egyptian gods, how they were all designed, where they all come from. With all the art and depictions that the ancient Egyptians have, I personally believe it was stylized. the conspiracy theorist in me wants to say it was aliens and there was crossbreeding, but I know that's out there, so I go with the more rational explanation. Let's see. Something else we're going to cover in the future, for sure.
I think it's kind of crazy to think that we understand exactly what has happened.
Oh, yeah. Jonathan, fist bumping? What are you talking about? We rode those into battle. Crazy?
The He-Man Tiger.
Oh, I love it. X-Comer, Walla Walla sounds very Australian.
It does kind of, actually.
Imagine what the fuck is on the 50,000 clay tablets yet to be decided or decoded in the British National Museum basement. Yeah, there's. I hate museums because they never give access or tell us what they actually have.
Do they've got so much stuff in like their storage at museums that they never let people see? It's unreal. It's absolutely unreal.
Are you familiar with what Belandris is talking about?
I am not. I'm not.
All right, let me see here. Let me do something real quick because kind of sounds like people are missing the comment. You can join the Discord. You can give us topic ideas. I can't guarantee when we would be able to get to it. We've got a ton of stuff we want to go through.
We have so many shows lined up.
Yeah. And of course, if something piques our interest more than what we have, we will definitely swap it out.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Let's see. Jess is shilling on my shit. I appreciate it. Jess is shilling your shit.
Thank you, Jess. I love you.
I appreciate it.
You're amazing.
Pixel talking on Occam's Razor. I love it. And for the replay people, Discord link. Seriously, join, give us topics, give us suggestions. We've got tons of stuff where I'm always looking for more. Val's always looking for more. He's got tons of stuff he wants to talk about.
I've never seen a Discord set up so smoothly, shall we say. He had this thing up and ready. He was like, here's a bunch of topics. What do you got? And I was like, here's a bunch of topics. Let's get into this.
X-Comer. Let me make sure it was X-Comer and I'm not being retarded. Yep, it was X-Comer. He actually dropped something in the Discord for us to take a peek at about the carvings.
Oh, nice.
So I like this. I like the idea that it is astrological and it is based. That makes a lot of sense if we're trying to track dates of when they would do things.
I'm not familiar enough with the constellations to know if this is a legit thing or not.
They change all the time. It could 100% be 100% fake. But as a theory, I like the idea. Like it puts two and two together for me.
Well, and Graham Hancock was saying that it dated specifically to this time and to that time. So maybe that's what he was touching on. That's got to date somehow, right?
Yeah. I know they've done similar stuff with tracking how Egyptian monuments lined up astrological. There's tons of star charts. And they've gone through and tracked the movements of the stars, even tracking them through the universe, so everything lines up. So it's not anything new. It's not anything I don't believe. I think it's 100% justified.
Oh yeah, mostly it sounds good.
Yeah,
I don't know enough about it to 100% verify, but it makes sense when I hear it. X-Cobra says it's from Ancient Apocalypse. That's Hancock's new show. That makes sense. I've watched it, but I don't recall that specifically. So let's move into a little more recent, shall we?
Let's do it.
This was written in 2020. Still excavating Göbekli Tepe. What's been most recently discovered? Göbekli Tepe might be one of the most significant discoveries the world has ever known. Located in the southeastern Anatolia region of Turkey, we know. So it reveals truth the ancient world previously never considered, many artifacts and ancient ruins that reveal itself. We've read a lot of this, so I'm going to try to kind of skip over some of it. Explain more about it every single day. So hundreds of obelisks have been unearthed. Pretty much everyone in the scientific community agrees that Göbekli Tepe is an important site to learn about. Part of the reason for this is because the findings at the site challenge so many prior thoughts about ancient civilization. Much of the ruin has shown itself in recent years, but much is still to be unearthed. Recently, hundreds of obelisks have been discovered, making the science community wonder just what the site's purpose indeed was. 15 mega monumental temples were uncovered a few years back. It seems like temple after temple is being recovered from Göbekli Tepe. The excavation process of the area continues to reveal clues to the past that force scientists and archaeologists to reassess what they had previously thought. Judging from all that has been revealed, more findings at Göbekli Tepe will continue to be unearthed, helping create a clear picture of an ancient civilization. The oldest temple in the world sits here. Talk about a significant find. Göbekli Tepe is currently the oldest temple in the entire world. The site, which sits in the country of Turkey, is roughly 11,000 years old. It is thought that this temple was created as a place to worship dog star Sirius. So much regarding this area is still a mystery, but with every finding comes new theories and questions about humans of the past. Many sites within the primary site keep popping up. Göbekli is not one single large place of worship, but rather many small areas or geological surveys. There are roughly 20 of these circles and some 200 pillars at the site. With every excavation period, more of the fascinating ruins springs forth. It wasn't until 96 that the scientific community took the area seriously, and much more still sits under the earth. In the end, many more circles and spaces of worship could see the sun. Göbekli challenges thoughts on beginnings of agriculture. The findings of this Turkish site are not only physical discoveries, the space is challenging initial thoughts regarding the beginnings of agriculture and settlement. The temples are thought to be 11,000 years old, predating cities and agriculture. Before Göbekli Tepe, researchers thought complex civilization and religion occurred after the development of agriculture. This ancient site suggests that hunters and gatherers who came here depended on agriculture to sustain and support their gatherings, meaning agriculture was occurring earlier on than thought. Lots of bones lie on the ancient earth. Recently, archaeologists uncovered several skulls at Göbekli Tepe. 3 craniums, each with deeply chiseled markings, were found at the site. The bones are the first of their kind to be discovered in this region, as they seem to have deliberate puncture wounds in them, not made by animals. Before the intact skulls were found, researchers had gathered thousands of animal bones and hundreds of bone fragments around Göbekli Tepe. New findings point towards skull cults. The skull fragments that have incisions in them, unrelated to animals, are making many in the scientific community wonder if Göbekli Tepe was a hotspot for bizarre rituals or even grounds for a skull cult. The skull bones also show evidence of being defleshed following death. One of the skulls had a hole in it that had previously been filled with a pigment called red ochre. All of these signs point towards some sort of fascination with heads by these ancient people. Artifacts discredit prior ideas on when pottery and tools were initially introduced. Göbekli Tepe was constructed in the pre-pottery stage. In fact, it stood before the invention of the wheel and writing. With only 5% of the site unearthed, so much remains unknown for now. Little evidence of home life has been found. No bowls or pots for cooking, but tools had to be used here. The site would have required some 500 men to move and manipulate the large stones. Tools would have been needed to chisel and create the discoveries found. Artwork at the site leads toward a possible headless fascination. Recent discoveries allude to the idea that skulls played some sort of part in the religion or worship of the ancient people who graced Göbekli Tepe. Some researchers are adamant that these people had a thing with headlessness. Aside from skull fragments, who doesn't? Aside from skull fragments found at the site, depictions of people carrying skulls, headless humans, and headless statues have also popped up at Göbekli Tepe. Were the people who roamed this region into beheading in the name of belief? Hunters and gatherers might not have been as nomadic as previously thought. During that particular period, humans were thought to be solely nomadic. This place begs the question, were humans during this period more advanced in civilization than initially assumed? To build this massive place of possible worship, hundreds of people would have had to stay there, work, rest, and eat. Aside from this, researchers continue looking into the possibility that groups of people stayed in communal buildings during their time at Göbekli Tepe.
Do you have any of the photos of the headless statues? I kind of want to see those and that kind of art, because
I don't think I have pictures of the art, but I do have a bunch of stuff on the skulls.
okay. I want to take a look at that. And while you're doing that, I'm going to catch up a couple of things. Jonathan, that 12,000-year-old tablet, I'm not going to pull that up, but are you saying there isn't enough already? Dance Biker Dance, what's up, man? Yeah, appreciate you stopping by. We have a Mighty Meat.
What's up, buddy?
Let's see here. I have a topic on that. It's probably going to turn into 2 or 3 shows just because of how much there's going to be in it. But yes, keep tuning in. But all you guys are saying stuff we already have planned out, so don't you worry.
So I guess how long is it? Yeah, we'll read this one too. So this is some PhD that I stumbled across while I was looking for all this stuff. The myth of Göbekli Tepe, what the archaeological fringe isn't telling you. If you're into archaeology, Neolithic civilizations, ancient religion, and of course, Paleo-Babble, you've heard of Göbekli Tepe. But in case not, Göbekli Tepe is an archaeological site in Turkey, blah, 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 blah. 94, we know that. Fringe researchers were quick to label it the original Eden. The problem is that other archaeologists who have now gone through the dig material don't believe the site is a slam dunk for a temple complex. One of them is E.B. Banning, author of So Fair a House, Göbekli Tepe, and the Identification of Temples in the Pre-Pottery Neolithic of the Near East. Oh, wow, that's sounds like a thrilling read. Current Anthropology, 52.5, blah, 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 like so many other antidotes to Paleo-Babble. Banning articles is not publicly available to those who lack access to scholarly journal databases like that. He outlines growing archaeological evidence for daily activities at the site, such as flint knapping and food preparation. The presence of this evidence suggests that the site was not, after all, devoid of residential occupation, but likely had quite a large population, Banning said. Banning goes on to argue that the population may have been housed in the purported temples themselves. He disagrees with the idea that the presence of decorative pillars or massive construction efforts means the building could not have been residential space. Archaeologists have proposed that quite a number of structures dating to the pre-pottery Neolithic A and B in Southwest Asia were non-domestic ritual buildings, sometimes described specifically as temples or shrines. And these figure large in some interpretations of social change in the Near Eastern Neolithic. Yet the evidence supporting the identification of cult buildings is often equivocal or depends on ethnocentric distinctions between sacred and profane spaces. This paper explores the case of Göbekli Tepe, a large pre-pottery Neolithic site in Turkey that its excavator claims consisted only of temples, to illustrate weaknesses in some kind of claims about Neolithic sacred spaces and to explore some of the problems of identifying prehistoric ritual. Consideration of the evidence suggests the alternative hypothesis that the buildings at Göbekli Tepe may actually be houses, albeit ones that are rich in symbolic content. So this guy's arguing that it's not a temple at all, that this was a housing place for many, many people, which I think makes way more sense in my humble opinion.
I don't think it's a housing complex, because it doesn't look like there's the space and the necessary building structures. But again, we're what, 5% dug up so far?
Something like that. We're not even close to getting all the way through it.
like those structures look like it's tracking something or leaving some sort of physical record for other people to reference.
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously there has to be a housing complex because that took, with as much as they're saying is there has to be more, even if it's not as stone. Like there has to be housing, there has to be food, there has to be workshops.
Well, they said it was a thing and being used for 1,000 years.
Like there's more there for
100%.
sure.
100%. 100%. So obviously there's the alien theory as well, right?
Yeah.
Personal beliefs. Biblical, obviously, is another one.
I think there's a lot of truth in religious text, but it has to be deciphered.
Yeah, I mean, these things were written down for some reason, right? These things were written down and reprinted in giant scale. There's got to be a reason. There's something in that
Yeah, like I keep running through like how and why in my head, and it's like, okay, there's at least a few thousand people working on this. If there's a few thousand people working on this, there's probably 10,000 or so working to support the people building this. Like we're talking a major city today.
yeah, huge.
And all this is hunter-gatherer society? No, absolutely no way. No way.
Doesn't make sense.
Let me jump through the chat. Oh, Jonathan, that sucks. That sucks, buddy.
It does suck.
Let's see. Just, guys, again, go to the Discord. There are rules. I'm trying to keep it tame and clean. We've got show topic suggestions for you guys to post into. Do it. I also just added a live chat channel, so I'll try and keep an eye on that. If you guys are posting something we're covering, we can definitely take a look at the stuff. Yeah, a lot of that, but I think written text goes back further than what we found for sure.
Well, in before, I think likely before there was language, there was art, right? You can draw something you see a lot easier than you can make up a language and spell it. So I think that there's probably a lot of that happening in this temple or whatever you want to call it in this site.
Yeah, and I did some research into languages, and there's the way it comes out is there's two types of written languages. One is characterization. You're using characters or representative symbols.
Like
the other one is you develop an alphabet. Which one's easier?
It's debatable.
We'll go with symbols.
Debatable. Like it's kind of weird, right? So the hieroglyphs was a symbol-based language, the Egyptian hieroglyphs, and we barely, like, how many people actually understand what the hell that language is?
A few handfuls at best.
Right. There's a couple dozen at the very most, I would guess. Maybe 100 at the absolute most.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people that study it and can, read some of it. Like, I sort of know how to read French. I sort of know how to read Russian. You put a book in front of me in either of those languages, I'm like, no.
No, there's no way. There's no way. But a picture of a creature, well, everybody knows what that thing is. That thing kills people. We all know what that is. Kind of neat.
Wild Red, welcome, buddy.
What's up, Wild Red? How you doing? I think we're starting to develop our own symbolic language with the internet. I think emojis,
Yeah.
someday somebody's going to look at our emojis and go, what in the hell were they talking about here?
Gotta hope they don't look at the Discord emojis.
The first guy that's like, you know what an eggplant stood for, right? They're gonna be like, nah, bro.
No. Look at everything they were doing. It has to be.
That's awesome. So I've got a couple things on the skulls, and then this one here is just kind of running through a few of the different ideas that have been. This is really brief. There have been a number of interesting archaeological discoveries at Göbekli Tepe, which is a hill that is in southeastern Turkey. Several standing stones were buried on the hill, many of them at the top, blah, 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 blah. The circle. So was it aliens that buried the stones? Because of the ancient timing of the burial of the upright stones at Göbekli Tepe, there is some speculation that aliens were responsible for them, because there are shapes of scorpions and spiders on some of them. The theory is that aliens quarried the stones, carved them, and then left them as a message to indicate that they were here. We were here. That's all it was. This hoax is easily debunked. No intelligent life from another world has been discovered. This does not necessarily mean it does not exist, but there is no direct evidence that Göbekli Tepe is extraterrestrial. Those who see aliens in these archaeological discoveries are likely seeking validation for their own personal beliefs. A little bit pointed there, sir. Was it the burial place of biblical figures? There is some speculation that the site of Göbekli Tepe might actually be a treasured religious site from the Old Testament. Figures like Abraham or Jacob may have been buried on the hill, since they were revered figures of their time, and that this would have turned the location into a place of worship. This would be especially true if there were Judaic populations that inherited the area so long ago. Because of the many bone fragments that have been found around the buried stones, on the surface, this seems like a legitimate explanation. So does your people.
I'm running through my head because I don't remember the old Jews going that far north. There were a couple other empires that they were competing with, but I don't remember them going that far north, but I could be wrong. Like mostly it was around the Red Sea and along Israel today, some of Jordan. I know it poked into now Syria, but I don't think it ever went that far north.
I've been at a church in Iraq that they said Jesus Christ had walked in. It was all fenced off and you couldn't like go in it or anything, but like we walked around the outside of this building and it was pretty crazy looking.
Yeah, I wanted to do a topic on that because there's a lot of crazy stuff for biblical stuff.
It was a pretty wild church. This hoax is not as easily debunked. It is possible that the Jewish people journeyed down to southern Turkey at some point during their history. Even in the Old Testament, they were at war with the surrounding cultures for quite some time. To have the ancient figures buried so far from their promised land, however, does not seem to make much sense. The truth is that no one knows anything about Göbekli Tepe. The problem with Göbekli Tepe is that there is no evidence of culture that surrounds the area. There are no homes, no water supplies, and no domestic plant remains. If it was a religious or holy site, then it would have been for the hunters who were scouring the region for food, or a pilgrimage location for those who practiced that particular religion. It is the hoax of Göbekli Tepe that calls it the foundation of modern religion, or the evidence of alien presence on this planet that can be quickly debunked. This is pure speculation without evidence, and from a scientific perspective, those are only theories instead of facts. Told you it was short.
I think I did find something related to your article, though. I do want to pull it up real quick.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens.
Oh, that dude's great. That dude's great.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing anything extraterrestrial was involved in a lot of this because, like, sure, there's depictions of it, but there's nothing. Like, they would have to take in everything with them. And somebody always forgets something. If you've ever worked construction, somebody always forgets a damn tool or a bag somewhere.
There's always a piece left over.
But we also haven't dug that much, so until somebody pulls up a blaster rifle.
Right. Something. I don't know. I'm not I think it's pretty likely that there's alien life out there somewhere. The place it's just too big. The universe is just too big.
Yeah.
It's huge. There's got to be some form of life out there, I would assume. Whether or not they've been here, are here, want to enslave us, kill us, breed with us. I don't know.
Yeah, hazmat's symbology is hieroglyphic, but there's also a language behind it. Like that came after. Guy Vermectin, what's up? Words is hard, y'all. Hieroglyphics for modern audiences. Yes. Pixel touching on our emoji discussion. Yeah, it varies. Like you can go to a different Discord, everybody uses a different set of emojis. It's very localized. It would just be interesting how much bleed over there is.
I'm sure there's some. Like I said, eggplant's always an eggplant. You know what I mean?
Yeah. To me, it's conceivable that Göbekli Tepe could have been built by hunter-gatherer tribes over hundreds of years, maybe a meeting, trading place, where only a few stones or work was done every season.
Could be.
Maybe. This makes all the turkeys alive now Jewish.
Turks, not turkeys. Turks, Jonathan. Turks.
Ethiopian Orthodox Toledo Church claims to possess the Ark of the Covenant. In Oxum, yes.
Is that one of the in-ground churches?
No, this is to describe it accurately. It's a shitty little building with a shitty fence that is guarded by armed guards, and allegedly, everybody who actually goes in, because it's very strict. There's nobody but high-ranking priests allowed in the temple. It almost sounds like they suffer from radiation poisoning, and they claim to have the Ark of the Covenant in there.
Okay.
I do want to get into that because on one of our shows, because it's interesting.
I don't know much about that one. That'll be good.
Belandris coming in with the hotness. It was the temple worshipping our alien overlords. Stargate may not have been entirely fiction.
Might be accurate.
Would be interesting.
Might be accurate. I don't know.
L'chaim, gobble gobble, asshole.
Oh, that's great.
Yep, that's what I just said a few minutes ago, but Belandris hit it as well. Let's see here. At the age of the materials required for it to, you would see things inexplicable in construction and whatnot before you find tech. Yeah, there are some weird things in construction all over that area that have me asking serious questions, but I still need more evidence. I want to believe, but I need the evidence for it, even if it's just a little.
I didn't even notice your background is Göbekli Tepe. That's nice.
Going with the theme here.
That's good. I like it.
Let's see. Pixel, interesting theory. But maybe we live on the toenail of an unfathomably large sadomasochist being.
I hope not.
Yeah.
I hope not.
Government in the universe may be teeming with life that will never be able to cross the vast distance to meet each other. It's probably more likely they destroy themselves or it's at some technological point. I agree with that very much.
I don't know if it's that could be. I mean, I could absolutely see that, but asteroids hit this planet all the time.
Yeah.
Big ones.
We're in a weird spot in the solar system that it doesn't happen too often that it results in a catastrophic event.
Jupiter's like a giant shield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Looks like you got another thing. Let's do it.
Skull cult at Göbekli Tepe. One of the significant designated spots, discovery further discoveries. I don't want to reread all of that. This year, researchers revealed that microscopic analysis of bone fragments found at the site suggests that human skulls may once have hung there on prominent display. The fragments belong to 3 partially preserved skulls that were carved and altered after death. This is the first indication of how Göbekli Tepe's inhabitants may have treated their dead, and archaeologists believe it may provide evidence of an early Neolithic skull cult that exhibit the decapitated heads of either venerated ancestors or dispatched enemies at designated spots. The discovery further underscores the complex ritual behavior exhibited at Göbekli Tepe. Marks on the 3 partial skulls indicate that they were defleshed, modified, and even painted. Deep incisions were repeatedly carved into the skulls with stone tools to create grooves that ran up the forehead and toward the back of the head. According to research, Julia Greski, one of the German Archaeological Institute, the skulls may have been suspended by a cord that wrapped around the head and passed through a small drill hole at the top. The incised grooves would have prevented the cord from slipping along the smooth surface of the bone as it dangled. The 3 modified skulls attest to the special treatment of certain individuals and represent an entirely new category of find, she says, one which testifies to the interaction of the living with the dead at this important early Neolithic ritual center.
Hold on. I heard all that, and the first thing that came to mind was alien ripping out the skulls and spine.
Predator.
Or a predator. Yeah.
Predator. That's what it sounded like to me when I first heard about the grooves and stuff. That's exactly what it sounded like to me. It sounded like a spot for a rope to sit without sliding back and forth.
Yeah.
So that skull cult is based off of this finding, obviously. At a 12,000-year-old temple in Southeast Asia, blah, blah, blah. Researchers discovered tens of thousands of animal bones at the site. The site's stone artwork includes depictions. A detailed study of 3 of these skull fragments found that their flesh had been removed in grooves carved from front to back. One fragment also had a hole drilled in it. The carvings consist, blah, blah, blah. Same thing, right? This is the beginning of that. And this is the last thing I got on the matter. This is the original discovery. This is carved human skulls found in an ancient stone temple. So I say we watch this little video,
Researchers
and it's less than 2 minutes
long.
long.
Of a Neolithic skull cult at an important archaeological site in southeastern Turkey. They found skull fragments with unique markings buried among the earliest known examples of monumental buildings, sometimes called the world's first temples. Since there were markings on...
So they found them off of 3 individual skulls, and these are the parts they have, right? So they're basing this entire skull cult theory off of 3 skulls. Right. I don't necessarily buy the skull cult thing, but it is interesting because it does seem that they had these on display or dangling somewhere. They were hung up on ropes, is my guess.
Yeah. That's not a lot of information to go off of.
It's sure not. Especially when you consider they've got hundreds of thousands of bone fragments and they're basing it off of 3 skulls.
Fragments from 3 different skulls, and they were found in the context of the Göbekli Tepe site, for which a clear ritual component is proposed. Researchers believe that these fragments could be evidence of the presence of a skull cult. A skull cult means people were modifying...
But you can see all the different tool markings. They obviously put a lot of effort into getting this groove in there.
I'm not... Let me see. I'm going to go pasty white here for a second. It almost kind of looks like they just kept running rope over it. Like there's not... Like they buried this, so it's decently preserved. it doesn't look like a normal tool mark.
Well, it looks like a very fine tip,
Yeah.
if you ask me. Or you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that means metal or if that means flint or whatever, but
I mean, bone's relatively soft too.
the human skull is pretty hard though. As far as
Yeah.
bones go, it's a hard one.
Yeah, I mean it's a hard one, but bone is really easy. I mean, relatively easy to put marks and chips and any sort of mark into.
For sure.
Decorating and displaying skulls in a ritual context. Other decorated skulls have been found at other Neolithic sites in the Middle East, but this is the first such find at Göbekli Tepe. Here, the bodies were buried, the skulls occasionally exhumed and stripped of any remaining flesh. Subsequently, skulls could be decorated with paint or facial features remodeled in clay.
This I find very interesting.
Interesting or disturbing?
Well, both, but they were rebuilding the faces out of clay onto the skulls.
Yeah.
And this is from Jericho. This isn't from Göbekli Tepe, just to clarify. This is from Jericho in the same area.
Analysis of the new fragments revealed cut marks in the skulls left over from the defleshing process, as well as deep grooves made with flint tools and puncture holes. These incisions and holes are a type of skull modification that hasn't been seen before in
He said flint. He said flint tools.
this region. It suggests that the skulls were strung up as decoration. It's too soon to tell whether these skulls were marked as a way to honor ancestors or punish fallen enemies. Researchers will be back this fall to look for more clues to the rituals, more skulls, and the missing skeletons.
It's interesting.
It is pretty interesting.
Like I mean, I guess it makes sense if you're it's not the only ancient society that hung skulls.
No,
Like,
not
a
at
lot
all.
of them.
Pretty wild, though. It's absolutely pretty wild.
Definitely wild.
That's pretty crazy. And ladies and gentlemen, that's all I've got for you.
So I kind of want to ask the chat. Like,
What do y'all think?
Yeah.
Think
Like,
it was
do you think aliens? Do you think weird cult? Do you think super ancient civilization? Tons of people. Like, your thoughts. Let's hear it. Yeah, no, this entire thing was a lot more interesting than I originally thought it was, though.
well, good.
I'm intrigued.
I think it's probably. I think Graham Hancock's probably close to accurate. I think it's probably some transfer of knowledge. I don't know if that's between an advanced civilization and a less advanced civilization. If that's between aliens and humans, I don't know. I don't know. But I think that's probably what it was. It was a learning facility of some kind.
I mean, it would essentially make it the oldest, well, we'll say, education center or library.
It's the oldest structure on the planet that we know of.
Right. I'm just, if that is what it was used for, like, now we have a learning center.
Yeah.
Like, that means there's more and a lot more.
And maybe that's I don't know. We'll get into those handbag things, but those are weird, man. Those are super weird.
All right. Wild Red coming in with the scientific mumbo jumbo. Okay. Let's see. Mighty says aliens.
It could be. It very well could be.
Let's see. Dance Biker Dance, reconstructing faces with clay, maybe a Bates Motel style.
Outstanding.
Could be.
Feds.
Maybe the feds have a time machine and they're just screwing with us now. Dance Biker Dance, Fallen Angels.
The Nephilim.
Yeah. we are going to get into that for sure. Xcomer, I think Graham got it right. Markings are an important event that should not be forgotten. A world eradication event. I think there's been a lot of those.
World eradication events, or
yes,
yeah, I think so too.
I wish that was possible. I don't think it's actually possible. I would love to have a time machine and just go figure it out.
Mighty says it's not possible.
Yeah, I'm with Mighty on that one.
Mighty says that if that were to work, you'd end up like in the middle of space.
Yeah, like
thousands of miles away from Earth, and yeah.
I'm not as sciencey as Mighty, but I 100% believe Mighty's right on that one.
Yeah, I trust him.
Impish says she agrees with Mighty. It was aliens.
It could be. It absolutely could be. People say that they don't think aliens would bother like studying us or whatever. I think we are very interesting. I think.
Look, all you have to ask yourself is, if we were the aliens, would we fuck with other planets?
Yeah, we would.
Yeah, we would.
We would.
Wild Red. Yes, Glowies. Jonathan, what if God and Satan are intergalactic warring sects of the same civilization? I've got a story on that. I'm doing research into it because I don't think I don't disagree with that statement as much as I think some people will. Let's see. Guy Vermectin thinks Göbekli Tepe is the first inkling of civilization, well before current archaeological consensus. I don't think it's the first.
Well,
I think
it's the first that we know of.
Yes. IOW acronym slips my mind. Is a proto city. Maybe it could have been a developing city. I still think there are tons of ancient cities we don't know about.
What's IOW?
I'm not sure.
Guy Remecton, what's IOW, bud? Help the boomer out.
We're both boomers in this situation.
And it does kind of remind me of like the South American or Central American Pueblo villages in a sense. It's kind of got the same feel to it to me.
Oh, in other words, that's what Guy Remecton says.
In other words, there you go. Thanks, buddy. That could be. That's
Guy Vermectin city in the Sumerian sense. I'm a huge fan of reading, we'll say biblical text and matching it up to history. I think the Sumerians had a much larger civilization than archaeologists are letting on. It kind of goes into this topic right here. I think it's a lot older. I think it's a lot bigger, and I think it's a lot more spread out than we ever thought. Also, Prime Directive. Yeah, I think Captain Kirk summed it up best. What's the Prime Directive? Let's see here. This one's interesting. Possible site of Babel where Nimrod was ruling. Not sure. I am working on a Tower of Babel intermix thing because I do want to cover that because it's interesting. I think I'm going to have Mighty on for one of the biblical discussions because we're going to do a bunch of stuff in that one. But I think that's all we got for today. I appreciate everybody showing up. Check in next week. We'll post something depending on when Val has the goats.
Yeah, baby goats are going to kind of play a role in how this works out for the next week or two, I'm guessing. But hopefully you guys liked it. If you did, hit the like, subscribe, share this video all over the place. I don't think we even cussed in this video, did we? I think this is pretty family friendly.
It's been pretty good.
I think we did okay.
I think we did great.
Look at me.
We'll let the chat decide.
Yeah, you let us know. Hopefully you guys
Let us
enjoyed
know.
it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it.
And everybody who's watching later, make sure you like, subscribe, leave a comment, let us know your thoughts. And
Do all
again,
the YouTube things.
yep, do it all. We love you guys.
We love you. We appreciate you. Y'all have a good one.
Later.
Later.